Welcome to the Project Management PrepCast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management PrepCast, the most personable way to study for the PMP exam at a distance. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. In this lesson, we look at the interpersonal skills that you as a project manager need in order to manage the project as well as your project team. And yes, we are going to get a little bit soft here. We are going to cover some of those touchy-feely topics. The interpersonal skills is that set of elusive soft skills that everyone always talks about and says how important they are. In particular, we're going to take a look at what interpersonal skills a project manager should possess, how the 12 major interpersonal skills help with project success, and there are also some other personal skills that we're going to be touching upon briefly. And because there are so many that we need to talk about, we split this lesson down the middle into two parts. In part 1, you'll hear about skills 1 to 6, and then in part 2, you'll hear about skills 7 to 12. And there are these additional interpersonal skills that I talked about just a second ago that we're going to look at in part 2 as well. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. First off, let me just say that this presentation is based on Appendix X3, the interpersonal skills that you will find in the back of the PMBOK Guide 5th edition. Now, this isn't going to be just a reading of what you see in the PMBOK Guide, quite far from it. We have simply taken the 12 interpersonal skills from the PMBOK Guide. We're defining them for you. We're giving you additional interpretations and explanations from our point of view. But the basics, the 12 skills and what they're all about, they do come from that appendix. Historically, the skills of managing the project budget, schedule, and resources have been viewed as the key to delivering a successful project. There's no denying the importance of such hard skills. They are tangible, measurable, and most importantly, you can also send someone to a training course. But it gets much more complicated with the interpersonal skills, these soft skills. So starting in the order that you will also find these in the PMBOK Guide, we have leadership. Leadership involves establishing direction for your team, aligning and constantly realigning your team into that direction, and motivating and inspiring them to want to do the right thing that needs to be done rather than forcing them. Team building, then, is the process of performing activities to help your individual team members work together effectively. These activities help to build trust, establish effective working relationships, and build team cohesiveness. Motivation refers to ensuring that you are creating an environment to meet project objectives while keeping your team members engaged in what they value most. Some examples of these values include job satisfaction, challenging work, and recognition, among many others. Effective communication is next, and it is recognized as one of the major contributing factors to a project manager's and a project's success. Effective communication with your project team and all stakeholders lays the foundation for teamwork and high performance. Influencing is a strategy that you can use to share your power and use your other interpersonal skills to convince your project team members and other stakeholders to engage in mutual cooperation towards the achievement of project goals. And then number 6 here is decision making. This is an activity that you will use throughout your project. Although there are many different techniques and models to help you in the process of decision making, the most important thing to recognize is whether you can make an informed and appropriate decision by yourself, or if you need input or guidance from your project team or other stakeholders. And now that we've seen this high-level overview of the first 6 interpersonal skills, let's jump into the details. Leadership is possibly the most elusive and most difficult to teach of these soft skills, of these interpersonal skills that you as a project manager will need. And as you will see as we go through this presentation, we decided to go a little bit outside of the usual way of how we teach here. We've gone and we've looked for inspiration from other great thinkers about many of the topics that you will hear about. And the first inspirational quote that we have for you here is from John P. Cotter from the Harvard Business School. And on the topic of leadership, he says, "Leadership is the process of moving a group in some direction through mostly non-coercive means. Effective leadership is defined as leadership that produces movement in the long-term best interest of the group." Our second thought is from John W. Gardner. He's the founding chairman of Common Cause and also an advisor to 4 U.S. presidents. He defined leadership as the process of persuasion or example by which an individual or a leadership team induces a group to pursue objectives held by the leader or shared by the leader and his or her followers. So, let's take these 2 high-level views here from these 2 great leaders and thinkers, and let's translate this into a few responsibilities that you as a project leader will have to fulfill. Throughout the project team leaders are responsible for establishing and maintaining primarily 3 things. First of all, the vision. Promoting the project's vision is especially important at the beginning of a project. At that time, you have a new team that you bring together to perform the work. Good leadership skills at this time will help your team to grow together faster. Second, you have to establish and maintain the strategy to ensure that everyone understands the direction and purpose. And lastly, there is communication, the message that you're sending, and how the message is best delivered to everyone. But there are more leadership responsibilities that you as the project manager have. As project manager and as project leader, you also have to be involved in team building and fostering trust and respect. And this has to be earned. It's rarely given blindly. Whether the project manager earns this over time or gains it from behaviors, actions, and building the most productive team environment, that is really up to your personal style. You will also have to be motivating all project participants by influencing and utilizing organizational and motivational theories that best meet the needs of each individual project team members. You will have to inspire others to achieve high performance levels, which can be done by appropriately communicating the vision, but also by mentoring and monitoring, as well as evaluating the performance of the team and the project. And of course, you have to be leading by doing, having the explicit or implicit confidence to lead and collaborate with others to bring out the best in everyone. And that, of course, takes us to team building. Michael Jordan, the great sportsman, defined team building as talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. Translating this into project management and team building, we could say that teamwork and intelligence helps finish the project on time and on budget. A team doesn't build itself. It takes work and dedication to foster trust among the team members. And in the end, that is really what it all boils down to. If you are on my team and I don't trust that you can perform the work, then we will not perform at a high level. If, however, you and I trust in each other's abilities, then we will increase our team capacity. There are a number of approaches that help you build your team, and they really go beyond what we can and need to teach you here on the PrepCast for the PMP exam. There's an abundance of information out there, but you don't need to know it all. Before we look at how the PMBOK guide views team building, let's look at team building approach from Gary Topchik and his book First Time Manager's Guide to Team Building. This works both for departmental teams that you need to build or project management teams that you are building. There are 10 steps, and according to him, they are to first get upper management support. Then define the purpose of your team. Define why this team should even exist and what it should set out to do. Identify time frames for your team. Select your team members and then also classify team member openings. Then you need to share the overall purpose. This is obviously where the vision begins to play into your team building. You start to see how these things fit together, really like a puzzle. Then decide on a team name. Give your team an identity. Create a team mission statement and goals. And of course, this particular step here is more applicable to when you create a departmental team than when you create the project team, because usually at that time you already have a mission and a vision for your project determined. Determine next the core team issues. Again, when you do a departmental related team, this is a very important step to do. And lastly, you also need to establish team norms. This is definitely true when you build a team for a project. You need to have clearly defined norms of how we work together as a team. The PMBOK guide, on the other hand, defines team building in regards to the tasks and the processes that are involved. The tasks include establish goals, define and negotiate roles, and define procedures for your team. The processes include interpersonal behavior with emphasis on communication, conflict management, motivation, and leadership. Developing a team environment involves handling project team problems and discussing these as a team issue without placing blames on individuals. And not playing the blame game takes us right into the next interpersonal skill, and that is motivation. Much more on motivation can be found in the Project Human Resources lessons, but for now let's take a quick philosophical look at motivation. And I have a quote for you here again, and this one is by Hilary Hinton Ziglar, better known by the name of Zig Ziglar. He is an American author, salesperson, and motivational speaker, and he says, motivating gets you going, and habit gets you there. Make motivating a habit, and you will get there more quickly and have more fun on the trip. And isn't this what we all want? More fun on the trip, more fun on our projects. So motivate your team. Make it a habit to motivate them, and you will get there faster and with more fun. Motivation is, of course, a curious beast, because what motivates me may demotivate you, but generally speaking, there are motivating values and demotivators. Let's take a look at a few so that you can keep those in mind when managing your project. The first one is always the missing top management support. If you don't have that on your project, your team really notices this, and they don't move as quickly as they really should, because the top-down support is just not there and lacking. Then there are always personal conflicts between team members that will act as incredible demotivators. It's just no fun to work with this man or this woman because we have a personal conflict going on. Then there is inequity in the reward system, because I'm being paid more than you, or you receive all the recognition for what has been accomplished by all of us. That could demotivate you or me. And then there are always project constraints that cause stress on the project, you and everyone else involved. Schedule conflicts, especially when you are working in a matrix organization where my line boss wants me to do something and you as the project manager want me to do something else at the same time. And oh, by the way, I'm in the middle of something else here. I ended up between a rock and a hard place. Well, I may break down, or I may simply be less motivated to conduct work that you need me to do on the project because, well, I may place more value on the other work that I do for my line manager. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have the motivating values. Of course, the first one that motivates me personally, that is job satisfaction. If you like what you do, if you enjoy what you do, that is a wonderful motivator. Job satisfaction comes in many forms, but is often achieved for me by delegating challenging work to my team members. This gives them a sense of accomplishment so that they see something through and there is a result that comes out at the end. At the same time, of course, you as a person don't want only some sense of accomplishment, but you also want to achieve and grow personally and professionally. And let's not forget this. I would like to be paid for the work that I'm doing sufficiently. So sufficient financial compensation is, of course, something that is required and that gives you, or at least most of us, some basic motivation. There are many, many other rewards and recognitions that we could be using, and just a thank you note or a quick acknowledgement during a team meeting, that can mean an enormous amount to your team members. And that takes us right into our next discussion, communication, because what good are all these motivating values here if you don't make sure that you communicate these motivating values, that they exist, and that your team should be proud for having all of these? Roughly 90% of what we do as project managers is communication, so you can imagine how important this is. Let's begin this yet again with another quote. This one is from Anthony Robbins. He calls himself the world authority on leadership psychology. For about 3 decades, he has served as advisor in regards to leadership to leaders from around the world. And what he said about communication was, the way we communicate with others and with ourselves ultimately determines the quality of our lives. Now, take this and move this into your project settings. If 90% of what you do on a project is communication, then the way you communicate with your team members ultimately determines the quality and potential success of your project. And because communication is such an important skill, it's a recurring theme here on the PrepCast. We discuss it in many lessons. So right now, let's stay very high level. And let's just touch upon 5 important areas in regards to communication. First of all, of course, you have to be aware of the various communication styles that are needed on your project. You can't just use one style again and again. You have to adjust your style and focus your style on the recipient of the communication. This means understanding the cultural differences between your culture and the culture of the recipient. And this may just mean understanding the culture of the organization of your customer, because you can count on this one. Every organization has a slightly different organizational culture than your company will have. This brings us then to the relationships with your stakeholders. The better your relationship with your stakeholders, the easier communication will be. And the more you communicate with your stakeholders, the better your relationship with the stakeholders will become. Of course, it is often a fact of the personalities of the stakeholders, whether you have a matching personality and you can get along well with them, or whether it's a bit more difficult and you are going to have to work through issues there. But not only the stakeholders, the people themselves, but also the situations are important. And you must take the overall context of a situation into account and think about how you communicate at any given moment with the stakeholders, with the team members, with the person on the other side of the table as you are managing your project. One of the first quotes that we saw on our journey through the interpersonal skills was by John Gardner. And to summarize, he said that leadership is the process of persuasion, as well as inducing a group to pursue the objectives that you as the project leader may have. So we're moving over into influencing, and we'll look at a few influencing guidelines and also the fact that influencing is sometimes the only power that you may have at your disposal as a project manager. But I want to begin with another quote, and this one here is by Napoleon Hill. He is the author of many books on personal success stories, and in regards to influencing, he says that you should think twice before you speak, because your word and influence will plant the seed of either success or failure in the mind of another. Leadership, communication, and influence, they pretty much go hand in hand. So let's look at 5 guidelines. It's good to keep them in mind when you need to persuade somebody, to induce somebody to follow your lead towards that project goal. First of all, you have to lead by example. And of course, when you lead by example, you must always follow through with your commitments. When it comes to decision making, clarify how decisions will be made. Make it transparent to everybody. Adjust your styles to the team. Adjust your styles to the stakeholder with whom you are currently communicating. When you have to apply power, then apply your power skillfully and cautiously, because applying power too often will very quickly make it wear out. And last but not least, long-term collaboration goes over the short-term gain. So if you influence somebody, think about the long-term collaboration that you have with this person, rather than, oh, if I influence you to do this right now, I can get my project finished on time. I have a short-term gain, but it's not a win-win situation. So long-term collaboration is always better than just a simple, quick, short-term gain. Ignoring the external and internal politics that surround your project can be hazardous to your project's health. Take this organizational chart here as an example. You lead a cross-functional project in this organization. All the boxes in red are part of your project. But you yourself, where do you fall into this? Well, oftentimes you are outside. You are not part of this organization. Maybe you are a consultant. Maybe you are from another division. Who knows? You have no formal authority within this structure here, within this matrix. And all that remains for you is influencing and leadership. You have to use your influencing skills wisely in order to make the project team understand the vision and see your enthusiasm and come to your side and understand where we are heading with this project. So you have to make them follow your leadership in order to reach the project objectives. So sometimes influence is all that we have. To summarize, successful project managers understand the importance of managing stakeholders through leadership and influence. You may need to analyze the political context in your organization and convert your adversaries and opponents into allies. The techniques to do this vary widely. As the project manager, you are ultimately responsible for delivering your project successfully. That means you are oftentimes the ultimate decision-making authority on a project. Let's take a look at this quote here from Napoleon Bonaparte in regards to what he had to say about decision-making. He says, "Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide." But how do we decide? What are the various decision-making styles that are at our disposal. When you have to make a decision, you must have the skills and confidence to make the right decision, or correct it later on when you realize, well, it wasn't the right decision. Let's take a look at a few decision-making approaches. First of all, group decisions. Group decisions can be made in one of three ways. The unanimous approach, where everyone is in agreement and makes the same choice. Then we could have a majority decision, where the majority decides which way we are going. Or plurality, in which we don't actually need more than 50%. It's just the largest group of people who decides on the decision, if we have sort of block votes. When one must decide, you can use the command decision making style. So this is not in a group situation, but in a one person makes this decision. Probably the one that Napoleon Bonaparte used most of the time here. He commanded his troops. This one is very quick. You are in command. You are the commander, and of course the team is not included in this particular style. This is hierarchical. This is why I said when one must decide. You can also use the consultative style. Here the project manager decides, yes, but he or she consults the team. Of course, this is often a time-intensive process and not best used when you are pressed for time. Another option is the consensus decision-making style, where you have a group commitment towards the decision that has been taken. This one takes even more time and even more effort than if you simply consult with your team or you command your team. And lastly, well, there's the coin flip, the random decision-making style. If you are at an intersection, take out a coin. You flip it. If it's heads, you will turn left. If it's tails, you go right. The idea behind the coin flip is not really to trust the coin and 100% of the time follow what the coin tells you to do, but oftentimes the correct decision is within you. You have a gut feeling about this, but you're not quite sure. And when you flip the coin and head comes up and you see, oh, the coin told me to go left, but within you, you know, we should actually turn right. Then you know that what's inside of you is the correct decision. So the coin flip, more of a confirmation tool for the decision that you've already made. We project managers often like hard tools, so that is why we sometimes use a decision-making model or process such as the 6-phase model. Let's take a look at that. First of all, we have to do the problem definition, fully explore, clarify, and define the problem. Then we're moving into problem solution generation. Prolong the new idea generating process by brainstorming multiple solutions and discouraging premature decisions. Then move ideas to action. Define evaluation criteria. Rate pros and cons of alternatives and select the best solution. Then we move into solution action planning. Here we involve key participants to gain acceptance and commitment to making the solution work. Then we have solution evaluation planning as our 5th step. This is the post-implementation analysis. We evaluate and we look at lessons learned from our previous decisions and actions in this model here. And lastly, evaluation of the outcome and process. Here we evaluate how well the problem was solved or the project goals were indeed achieved. This is an extension of the previous phase, really. And that's it for part 1, and so it's time for us to take a break.
Spot you later.
Until next time.